Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today. We are diving deep into a completely invisible yet totally life-sustaining process, how living things trade gases with their environment just to survive. And to really bring this to life, we're going to be looking at some beautifully detailed, highly realistic biological diagrams of our own local Ugandan ecosystems. So let's jump right in. Have you ever noticed a fish gasping right at the surface of a jerry can of old water? Or maybe you've wondered why a little bean seedling just struggles to survive if it's trapped inside a sealed plastic bottle. Well, what's really fascinating about these everyday scenarios is that they both point to the exact same biological crisis. See, just like us, every living thing out there, from the crops growing in our gardens to the insects buzzing around them, has to constantly trade gases with the air or water around it. Literally, when that trade stops, life stops.
So, here is our game plan for today. We're going to start with the breath of life, cover the core rules of exchange, and then we'll explore both plant and insect gas exchange before bringing it all together at the end.
All right, diving straight into part 1, the breath of life. Let's look at how organisms actually go about swapping these gases. Okay, so what exactly is gaseous exchange? Basically, it's the physical process where organisms swap gases, usually oxygen and carbon dioxide, with their environment across a specific surface. Here in Uganda, we rely so heavily on crops like maize, beans, and matuki for our daily food, right? Well, those plants literally breathe through their leaves to create that food. And in the exact same way, the insects in our gardens need a constant supply of oxygen to stay active. It's just an endless, essential swap. Organisms trade what they have for what they desperately need to produce energy. I really love this quote because it illustrates the concept perfectly. Think of a classroom window. A window allows fresh air to blow in and lets that stale, hot air circulate out. In biology, respiratory surfaces are basically the windows of the organism. Whether it's the surface of a leaf or the side of an insect's body, these are the designated entry and exit points for the gases of life. Moving on to Section 2. Let's talk about the rules of gaseous exchange and what actually makes a good biological window.
So, the crucial thing to remember here is that not just any random part of a body can act as a respiratory surface. For gases to move quickly and efficiently through diffusion, these biological windows have to follow 4 strict rules. First, they've got to be thin, so gases have a really short travel distance. Second, they must be moist. This is a huge one. Gases actually have to dissolve in water before they can cross cell membranes. Third, they need a large surface area, so a ton of gas molecules can cross at the exact same time. And fourth, they must be well ventilated to keep up a high concentration gradient. By the way, if you're prepping for your Senior 2 exams, absolutely jot these down. These 4 points are highly tested.
Next up is Section 3, Plant Gaseous Exchange. We're going to focus specifically on these microscopic structures called stomata.
In flowering plants, like our local Kiganda beans, this gaseous exchange happens mostly in the leaves through tiny pores called stomata. A single pore is called a stoma. If you look at this really detailed, realistic diagram we have here, notice how each central pore is surrounded by 2 specialized bright green cells. Those are the guard cells. They look almost like 2 curved bananas facing each other, right? Their entire job is to control the opening and closing of that central pore, regulating both the gas exchange and making sure the plant doesn't lose too much water. You'll usually find them on the lower epidermis, which is the underside of the leaf. Now, because stomata are completely microscopic, we obviously can't see them with the naked eye, but we can easily prove they're there. Imagine taking a fresh leaf straight off a jackfruit tree and just dipping it into a beaker of hot water for a couple of minutes. What happens? Tiny bubbles actually start to form all over the surface, especially on the bottom. The heat is causing the trapped air inside the leaf to expand and escape right through those hidden stomata. It's such a fantastic, simple way to visualize something invisible.
Okay, let's bust a massive misconception right now. A lot of people think plants only breathe at night. That is completely false. Plants are performing gaseous exchange 24 hours a day, but the type of swap changes. During the day, when sunlight is hitting them, plants are super busy making food through photosynthesis, so they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. But at night, photosynthesis shuts down. To survive, they have to continue respiring, which means they take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, exactly like we do.
All right, let's shift gears to Section 4, Insect Gaseous Exchange. We'll see how this works using a brilliantly unique biological design called the tracheal system.
Before we look at the system itself, we need to clear up another myth. A lot of people assume that insects, like the Nsenene grasshopper, breathe through their mouths. But no way. That's pure fiction.
Insects do not have lungs, and they don't even have blood that carries oxygen around like ours does. Instead, the biological fact is that they breathe through tiny holes located entirely on the sides of their bodies.
Let's trace the pathway of air into an insect. I like to use a simple memory aid for this. S-T-T. First, air enters through S, the spiracles. Looking at this beautifully labeled diagram, you can see these small holes right along the sides of the insect's thorax and abdomen. From the spiracles, air flows into T, the trachea. These are sturdy, silvery gray tubes that branch deep inside the insect's body. Finally, the trachea branch into the second T, the tracheoles. These are incredibly tiny, fluid-filled tubes that reach out and literally touch the insect's muscle cells. Oxygen just diffuses right out of the tracheoles and into the cells, ready to be burned for energy.
And that brings us to our final section, comparison and application. It's time to put everything we've just learned together. When you compare these two systems, say, for a big essay question, the similarities and differences become super clear. Check out this comparison table. For the main surface, plants use stomata while insects use spiracles and tracheoles. For movement, plants rely on passive, simple diffusion. Insects use diffusion too, for sure, but they can also actively pump air in and out by contracting their abdominal muscles. And regarding their needs, a plant's gas requirements completely flip depending on whether it's day or night, whereas an insect is constantly taking in oxygen, no matter the time. Keep these comparison points in mind. This table is a brilliant study tool.
Let's test our understanding really quickly with a real-world scenario. Picture a farmer in Kapchorwa whose fields have recently flooded. He notices his crops are starting to die in the waterlogged soil. Based on the rules of gaseous exchange we learned earlier, how does all that excess water affect the roots of these plants? Think back to those biological windows we discussed.
The answer is simple but pretty devastating, honestly. The roots literally suffocate. When soil gets waterlogged, the water physically replaces all those tiny air pockets in the dirt. Without that air, the root cells absolutely cannot get the oxygen they desperately need for respiration. And no oxygen means no energy production. Without energy, the cells die, taking the entire plant with them. It just shows you exactly how critical that continuous gas exchange really is.
Which brings us to our final thought for the day. Gaseous exchange is the breath of life for all organisms in Uganda, from the smallest ant to the tallest tree in Mabira Forest. Whether it's happening through the microscopic stomata of a bean leaf or the tiny spiracles of a grasshopper, these brilliant biological mechanisms are what sustain our entire world. Without them, energy production just completely stops. So as you walk outside today, I want you to ask yourself, what other invisible microscopic systems are working right now, right beneath the soil or up in the air to keep your local ecosystem alive? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious, and I'll see you next time.